Hello and welcome back, and that is right, it's that time again. It comes almost every time of year, doesn't it? Come around really quick. It's when Eddie and Robbie over at NAScompares go through Synology for the next year. This is our Synology 2025 predictions video, but I will say, as always, these are informed predictions. We'll talk about it in a moment, but we do have bits and bobs of information we found out in the background that hopefully facilitate a lot of these predictions. But we'll get into those in just a moment because, Eddie, how the devil are you? How's your British summer going?
Oh, I'm doing great. There is no sun this summer though, but enjoying as much as you
I'll say
can.
right now, British summer is 7 days of sun. That's it. The rest of you in the world that talk about heat waves, we get 7 days and we soak them up. Unfortunately, they're gone now, and that's our summer over with. It was fun while it lasted. But you didn't come here for a weather report, did you? So, straight away, Synology in the next few weeks, I'd say next few weeks, I'd say the next 3 or 4 weeks, is doing a lot of their Beyond events all the way around the world. Numerous of these events in different regions have already been announced. You can see the events page over on Synology. Hopefully it's on screen right now. And maybe there's a regional event happening very close to you. I recommend you check those out. There's one in the UK, I believe, halfway through September. If you're going to that, hello. But apart from that, we want to talk about what Synology is looking at hardware-wise for the future. That's the first half of this video. And thanks to Eddie, the web guy there, who, let's face it, knows a great deal more about this whole crawling business than I do, has ascertained a number of different model IDs there in the background. If you had to name, not to show our cards too much, Eddie, what are some of the Synology domains that have a tendency to give away model IDs like that?
Can't tell you. A secret.
Well, do you know what? I'm sure you can Google them online. But I'll say right now that the following model IDs are ones that we've still seen in the wilds listed on Synology resource websites. Probably the one that's the most known at the moment, the DS1825 Plus, the DS1625 Plus, the DS925 Plus, the DS725 Plus, the RS1625 XS Plus, the RS1225 Plus, formerly the RS1224 Plus listed online, and a new Beestation model ID. Those are the model IDs we've seen floating around, along with a couple of expansion units we'll talk about later on, and an RS40 series now. So we're not going to talk about those too much in this video. But let's face it, we'll talk about the biggest one, arguably the more popular one of all of those, the DS1825 Plus. Now, this is one we've got some information in the background, largely confirming what a number of us ascertained and unfortunately feared. The DS1825 Plus is going to have pretty much the same internal hardware as the 1821 Plus that came before. Before we go any further, Eddie, what's your reaction to that?
It's good that they are refreshing the line because the hardware inside this NAS is pretty good. It's Ryzen CPU. Obviously, those that use NASes for multimedia, they are not happy with this hardware inside this NAS. But otherwise, you can do Dockers, you can do virtual machines, you can do websites and databases and whatever you want to think of. But it's very important that it's being refreshed because normally the life cycle of a DSM on a particular unit is around 10 years. So if it was 2021 model, there were only a few years left really for this box to have their updates applied and released. So that's a good thing that they are releasing a new version. So there might be some new surprises about maybe finally moving up to 2.5 gigabit. And I think maybe it's about the time. But otherwise, I think I'm happy that they're still progressing at least and refreshing this particular model.
But the fact that all the indications that we're seeing online and from what we've had in discussions with certain Synology people in the background have largely confirmed that CPU is going to remain the same as the 1821 Plus. I know it's good to have a refreshed 8-bay model and therefore restart, if you will, the official support clock of any solution. But having the same CPU there, I think, is definitely going to ruffle some feathers. I'm not a big fan of that. And the other thing we found online, and this is less from official Synology sources and more on documentation that was sent to us, it does look largely certain it's going to have 2.5 GBE on it, 2 times 2.5 GBE for that matter. So they have at least scaled that up, and hopefully they scale up the memory, because at the moment it's looking like the same box, but instead of 4 1 GBE ports, it's going to have 2 times 2.5 GBE ports there. And again, I'm with you on the whole It's nice to restart the clock, as it were, but I'll be straight with you. That CPU has left me somewhat cold. I know Synology went for that series of processors there because they have a 10-year official AMD support cycle there, and it allows them to keep that CPU going for a long time without flicking out the different models along the way. But because they switched from a Xeon in the XS series above it to the next CPU up in this V1780B, they didn't give themselves much room to wiggle, and I would have liked to have seen more on this refresh of this box. 3 years on, when did this release? The tail end of 2020, I think, the DS1825 Plus. There doesn't seem to be a sufficient jump here on this system, and shy of, those, again, TBC, upgraded 2.5 GBE ports there, I see very little reason beyond the support extension there to go for this box. I know we have slightly different views on this, but the fact that that is going to roll out, and we've seen that model ID of the DS1625 Plus floating around, again, further reiterates Synology kind of slowing down on that hardware front. Again, treat this with a slight grain of salt, but in an informed grain of salt, I will put to that. But again, Ed, what would you say on that CPU before we move forward on to the next
There is
model?
one thing that I didn't mention. With all this AI revolution now taking place, actually, people need to move towards a hardware that has at least transcoding chip built in, this graphics chip, because even though it's not super powerful, this transcoding chip, it can still be used for AI. So if you want to create your own chatbot or any sort of assistant on your NAS, you will need this chip. And these Ryzen CPUs, they'll be lacking behind. And I think soon Synology will realize that as well. Since they are working on their AI features already, they might hit this wall, realizing that they actually need to introduce these graphics again into those models. And that would also please home users that they want to use these NASs for multimedia. So that would be win-win situation.
I mean, I'll say straight away, we are going to talk a little bit more about AI and definitely software and definitely transcoding in the second half of this video. But again, I know Synology are integrating their open AI support there with their AI admin console, and that's going to utilize third-party API. More on that later on. But I know what you mean. Synology would be remiss to not start integrating some in-house AI stuff beyond surveillance there, but we'll have to wait and see. As alluded to, the DS1625 Plus was another model ID that was floating around, and generally in the history of Synology, that always leads to the brand largely emulating the same thing on the 8 bay. They go into the 6 bay and then the rack mount and the 12 bay models. So maybe there'll be a DS24, 25 Plus or 26 Plus in the future there. But just before we move on to the next series of NAS, it's worth highlighting that another model ID that's been floating around is the DX525, and that is a new expansion model from Synology there. Now, the reason that's interesting, notwithstanding that a 5-bay JBOD box is generally as boring as bathwater, I will say that this one, we've got indications on some docs we received that it's going to be USB Type-C. Now, about bloody time, because eSATA is like the dinosaurs. It should be long, long gone. But whether it's going to be USB Type-C at 5 gig or USB Type-C at 10 gig is, again, going to be very CPU dependent there. But, I mean, for you, with the expansion chassis from Synology, they've never been hugely exciting. They're all JBOD based and stuff like that. But do you think Synology would go down that route of having finally USB Type-C 10 gig ports on their system, or stick with eSATA?
I think this is a good indication that they will finally move up to 10 gigabit USB port, because otherwise there was no real reason to move away from either USB type, the normal standard blue plug, or eSATA. Because otherwise, if you would stick with USB is actually slower than eSATA connection. And if they move up to USB-C, I think that's a good indication that they will actually have 10 gigabit connection there.
I think my only concern, as I sort of half alluded to, was it's going to be very CPU dependent. And if they're going to have the same expansion box there, this 5 bay, to be used on potential 6 and 8 bay solutions, and maybe even, we'll get onto it in a bit, 4 and 2 bay solution expansions, the CPU is going to dictate 10G USB support there. And, if Synology don't allow it on all of them, it could be that you get this box that's promoting a potential 1,000 megs or 750 megs with hard drives or whatever that can't actually achieve that, or it's going to be a case of them having to say, unless otherwise stated, treat it like 5 gig. But that's more for the future. Next up, let's face it, it's the one that probably a lot of people want to talk about. It's a new 4 and a 2 bay device, a DS925 Plus and a DS725 Plus. These are boxes that are coming up on 2 years old on a family series from Synology that has a 2 to 2.5 year refresh cycle. DS916 Plus, 918 Plus, 920 Plus, and then the 923 Plus with a slight, I assume, pandemic-based irregularity. Now, that older generation device rocked out with a Ryzen CPU, the R1600 dual-core embedded Ryzen there, arrived with ECC memory with upgradable 10GB. Now, I don't think the market embraced that box the way they embraced the 920 and the 918 before it. And unfortunately, on hands in the air, we have got no understanding or no idea what the specs are. We've got no confirmation, simply model ID numbers for that DS925 and the DS725 Plus. But for you, Eddie, where do you see that hardware going in the next generation?
I do not think they will change much again. They might introduce a few upgrades like USB-C and 2.5 gigabit, but apart from that, DS423 and DS224 is already taking care of multimedia side of things. So I don't think so. They'll push that same hardware onto these advanced models.
I mean, that would be a crying shame if this goes the way that they just repeat the same hardware with a few arguably slightly tokenistic upgrades. I mean, I hope I'm wrong, but one of the things that I didn't talk about a few months ago, and I know Eddie knows full well about this, but during when I went to Computex, we were already starting to get early indications of their Active Protect and DP series of devices. And if you look online, by the way, you don't have to take my word for it on this. You can look around online, and if you look at some of the earliest screenshots floating around of the Active Protect and DP series, what you notice on a lot of those slides is they're showing Active Protect rack mounts, but some of the earliest docs showed desktop units. They showed a little 2 bay and a little 4 bay in the Active Protect and the DP series of devices. Now, we heard about this. We were sent the information for a DP 320 and a DP 4. A DP 320 and a DP 340, a 2 bay and a 4 bay device into Active Protect. Active Protect, for those who aren't aware, is Synology's dedicated backup appliance. No DSM, singular focus, one panel, full management backup there. Now, the reason I bring it up is those devices were basically the DS923 Plus and the DS723 Plus. Same hardware, same kit, pre-populated within this new series. Synology were reusing that same hardware architecture that already served on the existing Plus series expandable 4 bay and 2 bay. Now, there's two ways we can go on this. Number one, they are just going to clone the existing hardware setup, but just have the same hardware architecture, but splintered off into the DP AP series pre-configured, and over here being the same box, as you say, with 2.5 GBE, maybe USB Type-C slammed on there. Again, CPU dependent and support of USB 3.2 Gen 2, depending. The alternative is that the DP320 and the DP340, notes are all mixed up, are just those boxes. They've just renamed them and sort of moved them around in the portfolio. And regardless if that's the case, then it does indicate they're just going to reuse that same hardware again. We've got no confirmation on this. It's really, really important to understand that this is the prediction part of the video. But unfortunately, there's enough evidence to indicate that option isn't off the table, that a new 4 and a 2 bay would basically be the same inside with some changes on the outside, maintaining the same price. I'm sure the same price point. Synology have done a fantastic job in the last 10 to 15 years of maintaining the same frigging price for this 4 bay with every iteration and hardware change, and credit to them for that. But how would you feel if tomorrow a DS925 Plus was announced from Synology, Eddie, and it had the same hardware but 2.5G and USB 10 gig? How would you feel?
I would be okay with that because it can sustain 10 gigabit speeds with those Plus series when you upgrade it, and it does have NVMe already storage or caching enabled there. And I think these are really good models for what they are normally used for. and that would be virtual machines or email server or website maybe, and things like that. So I wouldn't mind that, because DS423 can actually handle multimedia side of things now pretty comfortably, and I don't think that we need anything more powerful than that.
Wow, that is very level-headed thinking. I'll be honest, I respect you, but a few years ago, you'd have absolutely thrown your table out the window. I'm quite impressed. Oh, you're
Yeah.
growing. But moving on to the next model ID, this is another one that's been floating around for a while, the RS1625XS. This is basically just going to be the DS1823XS Plus scaled down to a 6-bay model, right? I think can we agree on that? It's just going to be the same as that 8-bay 10GBE model, maybe with one 10GBE instead of two. I don't think we need to talk too much, apart from the fact that exactly the same model ID in RS and DS is floating around. Now, the RS model is the one that I really want to talk about. The DS model, again, just alluded to, we think is just going to clone the 8. But the last 5-bay XS kind of model in this portfolio was the RS1619XS Plus. I'm available at short notice for parties. And I don't know what the sales figures for that one new NAS were, but how do you feel about the idea of this one new powerhouse rack mount that leverages a lot more internal hardware and power over just 4 storage bays?
Yeah, that's usually an issue when there are fewer bays available, but nowadays SSDs have come down to price and the capacities are available at higher capacities, and you can also do adapters where you can combine two SSDs together and have them installed in a single bay. So you could still actually achieve those speeds with only 4 bays. Because if you have 10 gigabit and 4 drives, when you have them in a RAID 10, for example, you could actually potentially have a perfect situation where there is no bottlenecks. You have enough speed available from your media, and there is enough boundaries available on your LAN ports. And it's like a perfect solution.
Fair enough. Again, while we're on the subject of rack mounts, though, let's change gear slightly. The RS1225 Plus, a half-depth 8-bay rack mount that everyone's waiting for. Why is it the half-depth 8-bay rack mount from Synology always feels like it's a million years away? If you go all the way back to the RS122 Plus, for some reason, despite this 8-bay half-depth rack mount being bloody ideal to a lot of home labbers, Synology, we see this model ID go through history, RS1221 plus, RS1223 plus, and it just hangs around. And we just see when we're crawling Synology in the background and using a lot of backgroundy type stuff. And again, I'm saying backgroundy type stuff because Ed will kill me if I tell you. But the RS1225 plus was already a model ID that existed as a 24 plus, and it just continues to persist. Again, chances are it's just going to emulate the 12-bay bigger than it or the desktop equivalent. But why do you think, Ed, that Synology seems to drag its heels a little bit on this half-depth rack mount?
Yeah, they don't care too much because it's down to sales numbers anyway. And because there are not that many home users that have their own rack cabinets, they rather prefer to have desktop units. But those that want to have their tidy setup and have their own rack mount cabinets, they will need these short depth NASes in there. And since there are not that many people, they are not thinking there is a point investing more of their time to develop new units for this. And those units that are available, they usually are powerful enough to do simple things like file server, backups, and maybe a little bit of virtual machines and Docker and things like that.
I'll say right now, before they eviscerate you in the comments, I know there's going to be a lot of users that run home labs that have their own compact rack mount setup at home. It's definitely a thing. But I would add as well on top of that, that when it comes to this half-depth rack mount, it is definitely popular. I think if you look online, there's a lot of users just sitting on their wallets waiting for it. We'll probably never know why Synology tends not to roll this one out too much. Maybe you're right, and the sales numbers are not indicative of the numbers and the popularity I see online. But it always seems a weird one that Synology doesn't rock on this. So, nonetheless, the RS1225 Plus or RS1224 Plus model ID has been floating around for a while. Synology are clearly entertaining a release placeholding that model ID within their back end, but still, nonetheless, it always kind of irks me. that's such a popular device, doesn't really see the light of day that I think it should. But moving on to the next model ID we come across, and this is another one that we can't really say the model ID because they'll end up just closing the door and we won't be able to find out more about it. But a new Beestation device. Now, the existing Beestation is available in one configuration. It's a 4 terabyte one bay model. It takes advantage of a reduced, streamlined version of DSM known as BSM, which runs a handful of applications for file management, backups, system configuration, and they are modified versions of existing Synology products, Hyper Backup and the like. Now, we don't know if this, and it is a greater, I'll tell you that much, it's a greater capacity than 4T. We don't know if this is going to be a mirrored version of that one bay box, or it's just the same one bay box with a larger capacity. But regardless of those outcomes, how do you feel about the Beestation series from Synology spreading its wings a bit more, Ed?
I think it's a good idea. It's a really easy to set up NAS because you can literally set it up in seconds. And I mean like in 10 seconds you can set it up. It's easier than WD Cloud. And this is exactly the reason why I was waiting for a new model to come out, because a one bay solution is not safe enough to back up your data, because so many people think that once their data is offloaded from their laptops on this hard drive, it's safe, but it's not. So you need this two bay solution where you have a mirror of your data. Obviously, it's not a true backup, but you still have another copy of your data on this second drive. And I'm really happy that they are creating these units, because I was worried that they will lose connection with their original customer, which was simplifying the home storage. But Beestation is actually a very good way to capture this market, these new guys in the market that have no clue about NASs, and just drag them into this Synology ecosystem or NAS world.
I mean, for me, that box, I hope it is mirror enabled. Obviously, as you say, RAID not backup, etc., etc. But just having that failover. If I had all my data on a OneDrive device, yes, I'm going to have to make sure I've got a backup on there. But if I'm on holiday or even at work and that drive dies, it's knackered, it's gone. And it's just not having a mirror on that 4 TB of data, because 4 TB may not sound like much to some users, but it's a lot of data and a lot of precious, irreplaceable data. My only problem, and I think this is a problem Synology probably had in the UX, user experience side, is humanizing the concept of a mirror and having two drives there. And more importantly, hot swapping. The concept of hot swapping, the concept of RAID failover, isn't a subject that translates seamlessly into idiot-proof, user-friendly private server hosting ownership there. We've seen WD, when they had that WD-EX2 thing, it had the two drives that slotted in via the top, but it still had slots. It still had caddies. And I don't know how well that kind of thing would play into Synology's design. Nevertheless, yeah, I really hope this Model ID we're talking about has got dual drives, has got mirroring functionality there, because that was one of my biggest complaints about the device, the lack of redundancy, but moreover, having multiple drives to read and write to. They're probably going to lock it in anyway to stop people changing drives, stick to their own drives there, and we've all got an opinion on that one. But multiple drives being read and written to for the OS sake, or just for rewriting environments. And I know RAID 1, we can debate the performance benefits of that, of course, but nonetheless, if it comes out and it's just the same frigging one bay with an 8 TB drive or a 12 TB drive, I will lose my nut. I will be furious about that. Because Synology have not gone to Beestation and gone, it's unpopular, scrap it. They've continued to evolve on it. They've added features. They've continued supporting it and continued to add stuff. This has not become vaporware, the Beestation, close to a year on. So fingers bloody crossed that we're looking at a mirror device there. Now, before we move on to the software, we've got to talk about some of the enterprise stuff, because let's face it, these days you can't talk about Synology without enterprise. We could talk about their cloud storage cameras, but we already talked about those in a great deal of detail, and I don't know what we would predict other than that they will get released. There isn't much to predict. I think you would agree on that. But then there is the Synology Grid Station, or GS series, the Active Protect series, and that Synology Flash server. I think you and I would be in agreement that the GS series, the Active Protect series of devices, even their new switch that is used within the GS series, they're going to get announced. They're going to get revealed, all that kind of stuff. Would you agree? Like, that's going to be their centerpiece, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's not much more you could say to it than that. But I think when it comes to beyond that, when they were talking about a flash server system that seemed like a modified SA system, Synology have really, frankly, dragged their feet on the subject of flash, particularly with regards to M2 NVMe and stuff like that. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. Do you think Synology are going to announce a new flash system by the end of this year?
No. For Flash Station, the re-release like time frame is around 5 years.
I can't. They may introduce a new flash station in their usual design, that one that uses SAS and SATA SSDs, and U2 the hell out of it. But in terms of a desktop flash system, they just don't seem to be engaging with it. I heard about a model ID earlier this year, and I sort of alluded to this in another video, and that turned out to be that flash station rack mount model that they showed at the Synology exhibition in Taipei. It didn't turn out to be a desktop model at all, which was really gutting. But it's a real bummer to me that Synology still persists in not engaging with this whole flash server audience when it's becoming more affordable. SSDs are becoming more affordable. You can, reduce the speed for temperature reasons on those drives. And a lot of, SMB mid-tier users and prosumers and enthusiasts are seeing the benefits of switching over to a pure NVMe system. And the affordability, we're seeing, Flash still kind of from Acer really messed around with the industry on that one in terms of their 450 and 750 6 and 12 bay flash server there. But now everyone a year later is getting on it, with Acer rolling out their second device, and those crowdfunding Eastern websites all are rocking out their own. And all the time, Synology not only are not rocking out the gate with an M2 NVMe flash system for those users, they're actually restricting more and more the use of M.2 NVMe slots on their systems. It seems incredibly counterintuitive to that sector of the marketplace there. It's super annoying. And I'm moaning at you, Eddie. You've heard this many times. What are your feelings on this whole subject?
Yeah, Synology tend to be very slow. They usually let others to spend their money on development and research. So when they see a proof that actually the sales are going up, then they start thinking about introducing those sort of models in their portfolio. Otherwise, they'll do nothing. They do have few units where you can have 2 slots built in and maybe add additional slots through the cards. So that's as far as you can go. And that's usually enough for, if it's video editing environment, then it's enough for you to have your projects on those 2 or 4 or maybe 6 SSDs. But otherwise, they don't think that there's a need for 6 or 12 slots of NVMEs or for a single project, because it's sort of portable device. There's maybe 2 users connecting to this unit if you're talking about video editing, and they don't think that there is need for more storage in this solution. So you have your unit with 2 or 4 slots of NVMEs, and then you connect another proper storage solution where finished projects are offloaded to afterwards. I think that's their stand.
It's just the idea of an NVMe system, even a 4 or 6 bay device, even at times 1 speed with a decent enough CPU. And those embedded Ryzen CPUs, by the way, are shit hot for this. They are great for this kind of throughput there in terms of model SoC architecture. What bugs me is you can have a system like this, stick a couple of two 10 GBE ports on it, hell, go 25 GBE, fit it into a switch. It can saturate that bandwidth in a smaller scale, and it's all possible. And talking about market research, and again, I know I'm labouring this point, guys, there's a chapter bar at the bottom, skip ahead if you're sick of hearing this, but look at, and I mentioned this before, all of those crowdfunding sites. I know they're a pain in the bum, but hear me out. Let's go right now for those 3 examples. You've got your Ugreen, you've got your ZimmerCube, and you've got your Link Plus. 3 NAS solutions that went on crowdfunding, all of which that have either delivered or are in the process of delivering as we speak. They raised $6.4 million. That equates to 11,720 DS923 pluses if you price them at $550. Those are customers that Synology are now not facilitating. Now, if you wanted to be fair and say maybe some of those people have gone for an 8 bay, some of them would have gone for something bigger, would have gone for more powerful units, fine. That is still $6.4 million of buying power that just left the market. Doesn't include any of these solutions going to traditional retail. Doesn't include any of their competitors that are starting to fill this space. Doesn't include third parties that we're going to be talking about very soon on the channel who are entering this marketplace. And they are all entering via faster bandwidth, faster NVMEs, faster hardware at the enthusiast, prosumer, and SMB level. And this still seems to be a market that Synology are going, okay, you're good for now. We're just going to over there. And I just don't get it. But that's enough of my soapbox ranting. Let's crack on with the software. DSM 7.2.2. That's right, it is the update I think a lot of users are wondering about. Synology, doesn't rush a lot of their feature-rich updates there, and we don't think we're seeing a DSM 7.3 or hell, a DSM 8.0 anytime soon. But it looks like increased testing is moving forward on an update DSM 7.2.2. And hopefully, this is where we're going to see the entrance of some of those features that Synology have been speaking about for the last year, like the AI admin console, maybe integration of the application for Active Protect, more on that in just a moment. But one of the things that we're hearing, and please God let me be wrong, is depreciated support of ACC VC1 and HEVC support. That's right, these license compression codecs and formats being depreciated in the next revision of DSM. Again, giant pinch of salt. This is all what we're hearing from some sources, some officials, some not. And how do we feel about that, Eddie?
Yeah, obviously, this is nothing new because they also were cutting down with H.265 support earlier, and they figured that out later because people were not happy. And obviously, this costs money. All these are licenses that they need to pay for, and for that reason, they are looking at the grand scheme and they probably think like, okay, how many people actually use Beestation and all this transcoding through their first-party apps? And then the statistics normally show that people actually switch to Plex and something more advanced and serious. And they probably rely on this as well in the long run, that people will be installing their third-party apps that do have paid licenses and come with these engines built into their software, so they don't need to actually spend money on it. But it could backfire with their simple Beestation solutions where they need this transcoding chip built in, because you cannot install third-party apps like Plex. So if you don't have this transcoding, and people nowadays have 4K cameras, they'll be very disappointed when they leave the home for a holiday and try to access their family videos to show their grandmothers and friends, and it wouldn't transcode because there is no license for this NAS. So that will be interesting to see how it pans out.
See, I don't know. When it comes to photography, I can't see Synology clipping the wings of Synology Photos and HEVC support, stuff like that. I think they're still going to keep that ball in the air. It's still going to require licensing in some multimedia cases. And I don't think Synology Photos is going anywhere. But we've already seen Synology slow down considerably in terms of support and updates for Audio Station. You can look at the download numbers and more. And I'm sure Synology, when they've got lots of apps, they're thinking about manpower, they're thinking about hours, they're talking about, quality control and stuff. And we've already said a few times before that it wouldn't hugely surprise us if Synology either, stopped supporting Audio Station in the way they supported Synology Moments, or at the very least, try to consolidate a lot of multimedia applications into a single tool. We saw QNAP do it with Multimedia Console. But with more focus towards something like Synology Video Station, which, I hear is still quite popular in the downloads, and a lot of people still compare it to Plex there. But when you mention the slow degenerating support of 8.265, and of course that is HEVC, if you remove that support on the box, it doesn't necessarily mean that Plex can still do it. Plex still needs the system hardware, it needs the system settings to get a lot of the job done. And it's already struggling at the moment when you're rolling out a lot of solutions that do not have integrated graphics, at the very least, for Plex to then be forced into using software transcoding to get the job done. It makes it even harder when the number of jobs that are going to require transcoding of files or conversions of files are going to increase due to the depreciation of certain compression and file format codecs. Now, again, hopefully grain of salt, but I still think if Synology remove that service, and again, complete this, we're going to talk predictions, I just can't see them maintaining long-term video station. I just can't, because it loses a lot of its luster at that point. And as you say, as long as they keep the Plex ball in the air, which they know people use, there's even less reason to use video station. I mean, the depreciation of HEVC, etc., I get it from a financial stance and from a populist stance. There's a lot of users don't use conversion transcoding. Then, they're only using their multimedia local. They're only watching it on particularly modern devices, not, watching on a phone, commuting home from work or sitting on the beach. I get it. There are reasons why they are not going to take advantage of their hardware resources, and Synology wouldn't make a decision without, proven analytical data. That's the way the brand works. But if they go ahead with the depreciation of those licenses and the support of those and eventually multimedia applications without a suitable alternative in place, people are going to be pissed. Again, these are predictions. These are, TBC. These are, semi-informed guesswork. But people are going to be pissed. Do you not think?
Yeah, exactly. There will be, because at this moment, when you buy, for example, a Synology and you have this video station built in, you don't need to think about extra charges like Plex. It costs you $5 a month, and it's just going up and up and up every year. So at least you have this feeling that you have your app available there. You can do your transcoding, and they will never ask you to pay to be able to do this thing. And with Plex, there is this option, obviously, but you will be able to use your Plex, because if you have transcoding engine built into a CPU, that's the license what we're talking about. So Plex have access
Plex
to
Pass,
this transcoding chip. You can do it if you pay for the Plex Pass. If you don't pay for the Plex Pass, then you need to use software transcoding, which means that you can use the CPU power to convert the video, but with Celeron CPUs, you cannot convert 4K video, so you're very limited. But people will be annoyed because Synology costs more than other NASs, and if you don't have this added value, like free transcoding through their first-party app, then they will start thinking like, maybe I should really get a DIY NAS, because if I'm using all these third-party apps, what's the point of Synology in the first place? You're just paying for the hardware, so overpriced.
But I mean, returning to the software there, the next thing to talk about is Active Protect. Now, I need to add at this juncture, I really like Active Protect. I actually genuinely like it, and all the DP series, I like them. I like the fact, much like Beestation, it is set up 10 minutes. I like it's a single pane, full access to all of the backups. It's semi-autonomous. It is easy to manage. It is frighteningly user-friendly, I will say, in terms of a backup appliance. I really like it. I'll put my hands in the air and say I like it almost as much as I like Active Backup Suite. But that leads us to the next point. There is no way, there is no way Synology is going to maintain and improve the feature set of these two horses in the race when Active Protect is license free. Active Backup Suite is license free and Active Protect isn't. Active Protect, you get the first year, you get it on pre-populated machines, and then after that, after the first year, it's subject to a licensing based on the amount of storage you've got on there to run the appliance and all of its full features. If you don't pay the license, you still get some of those features, I believe, but you can't use it to its full extent. We're also seeing, and it was alluded to on several different presentations and on certain diagrams, that there will be an appliance, an app that you can run on standard DSM devices to use it either as a target for another backup of an existing Active Protect setup or to actually negotiate a backup operation. And I can definitely see a version of reality in the future where the Active Protect R&D takes priority. An Active Backup Suite just gets security updates and that's it. And then maybe they end up depreciating the license. It maybe be DSM 8 or 8.1 or whatever. They suddenly go, right, it's costing us a lot to support this appliance. What are we going to do about it? And I genuinely see a version of events where Active Protect replaces Active Backup. Not in the near future. This could be a video for the very, very future. I think they'll continue to support it. I think they'll do security updates. I just don't see them evolving Active Backup Suite any further because of Active Protect. For as good as it is, I think that will end up being the priority because we've seen Synology take that model in terms of moving towards, not, I'm going to say a licensing structure, but I'm going to say an enterprise structure. What do you think?
Yeah, you can see all brands are doing this subscription model now as well, and you can see that across the board because that's the very predictable and easy way to maintain the service and updates. Because it's not just one-off price you pay. Because normally it would be 5 years or 10 year cycle before you upgrade your NAS. So all the money that you pay, it need to be distributed across these 5 to 10 years. So it's not very good way of reinvesting the money. It's not predictable way. So I think subscription model is annoying, but it makes sense. And as long as there's going to be a competition in the market, they'll be forced to keep the prices down. So for that reason, I hope that QNAP and other brands come with their alternatives in the market, so they cannot have a monopoly and hold people at ransom.
Which leads us to another point on here before we get to the final predictions. Your favourite subject, AI. Eddie's a real guy, by the way. He's not actually just some AI. Synology AI Admin Console. We've heard about it now for more than a year when we first saw it at their own event in Taipei in 2023. There's going to be a lot of users that look at the idea of AI integration in their Synology NAS in a very negative light. They're going to be like, absolutely no way do I want AI dicking around with my NAS. I don't want ChatGPT. I don't want Google Gemini. I don't want Azure AI. I don't want any of that dicking around with my data. And they're just not a fan of it. They don't like where that's going. There's going to be the other people on the other side of the fence that go, as long as that AI is secure and as long as it can only access the things I give it access to, and it is genuinely being used as a tool to facilitate access to my data in a time-saving and efficient way, they're going to be on board with it. And the way Synology have outputted and at least shown by several demonstrations how they plan to integrate AI services currently into their system, I think a lot of those second half of the people hearing this are going to be very, very happy. The idea that, it's going to be a kind of a controller, an AI controller on the system that uses a third-party AI API within the system with your own, login, etc., security credentials and more authentication. And then on top of that, you're going to be able to bar it from sharing or accessing certain kinds of data with restrictions on secure data. You can enter some kind of profiles of data that you never wanted to be able to share or use. They're also restricting, it doesn't have access to the whole thing. It's just very key applications in the Synology collaboration suite, chat, mail, office, stuff like that. What's your thoughts on Synology's integration of AI in this system? Are you in the first party or the second party? Shock me.
I do not like the fact that they are linking AI, third-party AI, because I'm very pro in-house solution. When you have your own private chatbot or your own AI engine, which has access to all of your data or whatever you want to give access to, definitely not third-party like ChatGPT or other AI services, because there have been so many cases already that company data has been stolen, or not sometimes stolen is just like but employees not looking after what they are sending to these AI bots. That so much confidential information is being sent out to these bots, and honestly, everything all the time when you interact with these AI bots, you train these models and you give away the knowledge from your business into the cloud for others to use. So it's not really a great solution. I'm really anti using any third-party AI service linked to your NAS, only internal engine. And for that reason, I said that we'll need this hardware with graphics chip built in, or actually maybe have a dedicated PCIe cards, like we have one on DVA series surveillance NAS. Maybe that could become a really great AI NAS one day.
I mean, how about a middle ground there? What if Synology hosted a web-based AI? All of your calls only went to it, so it was still in the first party, and arguably not unlike using their own relay server for remote level access or remote level notification and control. And, Synology would have to work out how exactly they would financially support, these AI calls towards the data. Hit my mic there, sorry. How do you feel about that? Do you think that would be working as a third party alternative? Because you've got not a third party, a third alternative solution. Because you said yourself, the average hardware on the majority of Synology systems is just not, It's not there for hosting AI. You'd need an upgrade. Although it isn't impossible to run it on, some Celeron systems, you're talking very basic level operations there. But at the same time, if Synology was hosting a database there and you could use its AI engine, its AI services, its LLM based in-house on some ridiculously powered platform there that users could access, perhaps on a licensing model, how would you feel about that?
Yes, they could. They could run their own AI server because they do have this Office suite, and they need to have these functions available. I don't know actually at the moment what service they are using for AI to do auto email generation that they were presenting on their expo in
That was
Taiwan.
third-party
I
API, yeah.
don't. I don't know if that was third party or built-in engine. It's most likely third party. But I would feel safer if that was handled by their own server, because otherwise you don't know what's happening at the back of the stage,
Mm.
at the background.
So you're saying right now you would prefer it if Synology Chat, Synology Office, Synology Mail obviously is going to need online services. You would rather they had access to this Synology-based AI. Let's be realistic that any kind of LLM or any kind of AI services that they would utilize, it would be using code and build from elsewhere. They are not AI pioneers, but you would be okay with that. Okay. So before we wrap things up, in terms of predictions, if there's anything we've not covered, give me the most positive prediction you've got and your most negative prediction that you've got for Synology in the future. If you need more time to think, because this is off the cuff, let me know, because I've got a couple of humdingers.
Okay, you start first.
Okay, so I would say for a positive, I think in terms of a positive, Synology is going to stick the landing beautifully in terms of a lot of their backup appliances. When it comes to their platform being secure, when it comes to their platform, a lot of their applications still doing what they do, I think Synology are doubling down now on a lot of those backup appliances, a lot of the file management appliances there. And I think this is something we're going to see them further strengthen. I really, really like the whole surveillance cloud stuff as well. I know I'm a kind of, no, I don't think I'm in a minority, but I know the idea of cameras that get rid of the idea of the NAS in the middle and goes directly to the cloud are annoying some users. But I've spoken to enough deployments where that is a good thing. And I think Synology are going to continue down this road of having backup, failover, redundancy, like back all of those things while keeping them stable and secure. I think we're going to see more and more of that from Synology, not only in their 2024, 2025 events, but in the next 12 months or so. I think we're going to see a continuation of that. Unfortunately, and here's my negative, I think we are going to continue to see further segregation and retirement of certain Synology properties. What do I mean by that? In the last 12 to 18 months, I will destroy my phone. I'm waiting for a parcel. It's going nuts. Sorry about that. I think we're going to see, in the last 12, 18 months, we have seen Synology go from having DSM and their router software to suddenly deviating into BSM for entry level stuff that has multimedia support there, that has file managed support, has local lower scale backup support. Running DSM, we're seeing them rolling out with a modified version of DSM for the GS series, Grid Station. We're seeing them rocking out with the Active Protect software as well. They already had that dual controller UC version of Synology software, and we're seeing them create multiple versions of operating environments for their platforms. And I think what we're going to start to see is certain apps like the multimedia apps be depreciated on DSM and moved over to BSM. I don't think this will be solidified now, but I think however and whenever DSM 8 comes along, we're going to see apps start to be moved around, relabeled, rebadged, whatever. That is a prediction I would put forward there. It is quite bleak, and I think there are a lot of DSM users that still buy for DSM's customization and containerization and stuff like that. But they might be running multi-purpose and then find out that one of those purposes has just disappeared. That's my mainline prediction there. But again, that is a 12 to 18 month prediction. Go. Positive, negative.
Yeah, for me, I like the fact that new DSM updates will come with AI built in, because Synology seemingly is the first brand that actually is pushing AI in this way, that AI Office and emails and all this service Other brands do not do this. So I like that they are actually seeing this as a future, not just face recognition or object recognition and AI-based surveillance. I actually like that they are moving towards AI-based office. Just as long as they keep it in-house, have their own C2 AI engine, I'm happy with that. And the bad thing, what I would see, is that they are seemingly moving towards the enterprise market with their GPU series and all these things. Obviously, this is a really good product, but it looks like you cannot focus on so many things at the same time. So seemingly they are shifting their focus towards enterprise markets. So it means someone will suffer, and that's going to be medium business or home. And that's what I'm not happy about.
Do you think we're seeing a lull in the storm, as it were, in terms of releases? We've been through this before when it seems like Synology have dried up in terms of their mid and lower tier releases, and then they suddenly roll out a dime a dozen solutions. We saw it in 2019 going into 2020. There was almost like a drought of Synology SMB prosumer enthusiast solutions, and then suddenly the 2020 series of devices, and we saw so many releases in that sector from Synology all at once. Do you think we're looking at now the same thing happening again, where we're suddenly at the tipping point and then this video is going to be useless because in 3 months Synology roll out 10 different solutions all at once? Or do you think that is not the case and this is very much a complete change of tactic from the brand?
There was quite a dry spell for quite a while now, and people have been asking for new units quite a while now. And I think you can look at the portfolio that they have, and there are quite a few 21 plus series, or even worse. And there will be so many things probably cancelled completely or refreshed. And I can see this autumn to be quite busy.
Fingers crossed. Okay, well, thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. Let us know your predictions below. I know it's been a long video, and a lot of this is informed suggestions and informed predictions, but that is what they are, predictions. Grain of salt all the way. So keep that in mind and don't just trust two guys on the internet, okay? Thank you so much for joining today, Eddie. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Again, linked in the description to all of the updates on Synology's 2024-2025 releases. We update it regularly. I think it's updated on average probably about once every 2 weeks with more and more information to do. Check that out. But apart from that, thank you so much for watching and have yourselves a bloody great week.